Everybody. I haven't given this presentation for a while, so it's going to be a little rusty between me and the slides, so cut me some slack, please. My name is James Haft. I'm the former chairman of DLTX, which was the first publicly listed Web3 company. David and I developed that company and sold it last year. Now focused exclusively on decentralized platforms. I think that's the future. And the conversation I want to have today is not technical. Everyone here is much more technical than I am. I am an art history major and do this because I love it and because I believe in decentralization, and you'll understand why after this conversation. So instead of talking about all the technical aspects, what I want to try and get everyone to understand is to have a little different perspective on the why, but really more on the how and the where. Because you're going to see that everyone in this room is going to end up becoming an evangelist. You're going to end up relaying the information that you have here. And the way to bring people into the community is by having a narrative. You need to have a story. Nobody really cares about the technology. They care about why does it matter to me? And how do you put this into context so that it matters to me, so that I can teach my children, so I can have a better life, so I can protect myself, so I can profit and be healthy, right? And so to put it into context here, why is decentralization so important? All the things that Matt talked about and David talked about and Ryan talked about, what happened to humanity that we need this? And what happened was 500, 600, 700 years ago, humanity realized that we needed to make a trade between our self-sovereignty and centralized authority to get order out of chaos. The world was turning into chaos. You needed to have some order, some social contract for people to relate to each other, so there'd be a framework so that we could collaborate and do all the great things we've done over the last several millennia, right? And so that trade-off was with religion and with government and with taxation and with the military and police and with political borders, right? All these things involved trade-off where I gave up some of my self-sovereignty in return for agreeing to a deal because everybody else is going to act by the same deals. And in order to get everyone to act on that same playing field, what we're going to do is we're going to bring in a centralized authority, and that authority is going to work for us. God is going to be for us. The government is going to be for us. The military is going to protect us, right? And then what happened was those authorities started to realize they have no power unless they control you. Right? And so in the beginning it was incentive. I will buy into this system because I'll have more crops. I'll have a currency that I can use. I'll have a military that will protect me. But then all of a sudden, instead of being incentivized, all of a sudden those authorities turned around and said, wait a minute, if you don't tithe to the church, you're going to hell, right? If you don't pay your taxes, you're going to jail, right? If you oppose the military, you're dead. Right? And so it started to become, instead of having these authorities working for us and providing this ecosystem for us, it's turned into now over time, we work for them. Right? How many people here think the government in Washington works for them? Right? How many people think the IRS, Matt, you're out. All right. So how many people think the IRS works for them? Exactly. I'll try and keep a straight face here. And how many people trust the police? I mean, just think about, Pedro, come on. So we're at this point now where these centralized authorities that are supposed to protect us, that are supposed to give us order, and supposed to give us the environment that we can succeed in, instead are the exact people and organizations that we hide from, that we actually sculpt the way that we live in a way not to offend them because we're afraid. And we can't leave because the penalty of leaving is dramatic because they're using violence to keep us in control instead of incentive, right? And so when you look at Bitcoin and you look at the Satoshi white paper, you look at the whole idea of decentralization and distributed ledger technology and the idea of open software and sharing and being open and basically truth without trusting and being able to hold people accountable because you actually know the facts. Right? That's why these technologies are taking over. Not because Bitcoin is money, not because of meme coins, not because of Solana or whatever. It's because humanity right now, we need this. right? We need to protect ourselves. So if you look at the meeting we're having today about AI, I'm going to throw in the word fractals just for Tim to see if he's paying attention. But it's all the same shit over and over again, right? We need something to disintermediate between us and the police, something between us and politics, something between us and what is considered money. Like, we now need to take back that control. And that's what decentralization does. And this is just a tool that enables us to have that relationship. So it's not about the technology. It's about human desire, human needs. This is what humanity needs right now. And we're at the forefront still, at the beginning of this new revolution of the rebalancing of power, at the ability to control your own data, to own your own relationships, to own your own money, right? And that's really what all this is about, right? And so that to me is how we got here, all right? And then, and where I want to lead into is metaverses, okay? So the idea here, so Neil Stephenson, 1992, this is the reason I'm in crypto, because of Neil Stephenson, because he wrote Snow Crash, he wrote Ream D, and Cryptomicon. These books basically talked about a new way of looking at the world, a new way to organize. And if you pay attention, not to the storytelling, but to the concepts in there of humanity and how humanity relates, because science fiction is not about science, it's about people, right? And so he laid out this whole idea of a flat world where the news is reported by individuals like you and me who wear cameras and report, where you have your own ability to travel and meet unfettered, and that whole dynamic between reality and, well, that there doesn't have to be the difference between reality and virtual, that actually you can have another facet of living that doesn't have to be person to person in real life. So he created this whole idea that I could have friends that I've never actually met, who are going to be represented by an avatar that represents what they want me to see, and that they can make many avatars and have each avatar be different and have a different relationship and actually act out a different part of my life, so that I no longer need to trade all that data that's being required from me by the government and by the banks, et cetera. Why do I have to tell the banks when I'm transacting money with somebody else? Why do I have to tell them my area code and my phone number and my bank account when I want to buy a car? Right? It doesn't make any sense. It's so they can tax you and control you, obviously. So Neil Stephenson came up with this idea, and it was his vision of how the world was going to change, because humanity would need it to change. So, early on, metaverses, wow, they're great. Isn't it cool? Here's my virtual reality, and I can go Roblox over here, I can have friends over there, I can, all this stuff. And so people, have been focusing on the visual part of metaverses. They've been focusing on an important thing, social networking, communication, self-expression. Those are all very important. But I think that we need to take a look a little further about why we need metaverses and why they're important to us, and why I want you guys to start looking at metaverses a little bit differently. So when you're in a metaverse, you're literally in a world, a decentralized, real, distributed ledger metaverse, not the games. They're a world. They need regulations, right? They need a physical methodology of a method of communication. They need a method of storing and having history and memory, right? And having opportunity for the future, right? And so these now basically form these little virtual worlds where the law is the code. And in a proper decentralized environment, the code is transparent, it's predictable, right? It's peer-to-peer, and it's algorithmic. So you actually can predict, they're deterministic. You know, according to the rules that you've signed up for, that when you do X, Y will happen. It's written into code. You don't need a third person to tell you. There's no arbiters, there's no courts, right? You may not like the result, but you'll be able to trace mathematically why the result happened. So you won't have that level of confusion. It doesn't mean you're going to be happy necessarily. It doesn't mean you're going to like the outcomes, but you'll know what the outcome should be. You're removing that whole level of the conflicts of self-interest from the issue. And more importantly, these environments are inviting you in by incentive. There's nobody that says that you have to move your avatar or your assets or your relationships into Decentraland or into Sandbox or into any other virtual reality or any other metaverse, right? You choose it. And the reason you choose it is because you're given incentive. You choose it because it protects you, because you like the laws, because you like the people there, because they give you yield on your Ethereum. I mean, literally you can have any reason you want, but you choose it because you want to be there. And more importantly, when you no longer want to be there, you leave. You take your portable digital assets, you pick them up, and you go into another environment which does have what you want. And it might be there was nothing wrong with the first one, but you were a teenager for the first one, and now you're married and you want a different environment because you want one that's more family oriented or whatever it is. But the idea is that now what's happening is that these environments, the jurisdictions where you are transacting and where you are existing and keeping your assets and your relationships, and your ideas and your money, right, are forced to solicit your interest through incentive, right? And that's diametrically opposed to violence, right? And so if you think about it, humans choose the path of least resistance. So once it becomes easier to do these things, and it's easier to have digital assets, and easier to enter these environments, then you're going to start to see that we're doing more and more of our life within these environments. And so these environments are important sociologically, and in business, because they offer opportunity, and they offer, instead of a competition for limited assets, they represent the representation of abundance, of new things that you can do with new or the same people, but new and cool things that you do, that you own, that you control, that determine how it's going to happen, and you determine if you want to stay. And this is not the future, this is now. There's companies like NVIDIA and other organizations, BMW does this, and what they do is they bring all their suppliers together into these virtual worlds, and they actually build and try and experiment together inside these environments. So it's already happening that people are doing this off the grid and doing things they couldn't do otherwise, because they're able to do it within these confined environments where they understand the rules and they actually want to be there, right? I mean, it's just an aside. If you think about it, I'm American, I'm going to be American for a long time. But it's very hard to not be American now, right? Because my mother was standing in one place when I was born. It takes me 10 years of taxation after I decide I want to leave, for them to say it's okay that I'm not making a mistake myself to leave the United States, right? If it was so great to be here, they wouldn't be forcing you to stay, right? So you got to think about that, even in the most glorious, U.S. Representation. So I think that's why the problems that we're going to have is I wrote a joke over the weekend where we were talking about, it was with Arena, I don't know if she's here, but basically we were talking about this event, and I was saying it's very disorganized, decentralized, right? And so it's like, that's a perfect Freudian slip, right? It's because decentralization is messy. It is really interesting. It doesn't always work. It's confusing. And it actually depends on something which is alien. We've become lazy. We've been asking for the answer in some document. We've been told how to do it with our money and our ideas, our relationship and our education, right? So we're lazy. But the thing decentralization needs to be successful is education, right? You need to be willing to take the time to read the Morpheus, web page and figure out whether you're technically sophisticated enough to be providing computing power to earn Morpheus tokens, right? And trust me, if anyone here in the room is like me, I'm not sophisticated enough. Right? I have to try and figure out other ways to game the system because I'm not there. And the success of platforms like that will be actually abstracting out the technology so more and more people can understand it. But the early adopters who have the education, who understand why it's important, who see the community forming, that get in early, those are the ones who are going to get the biggest bump. So it's not really fair launch. We call it fair launch, but it's not really, it's fair launch for people who understand technology, right? But for everyone else, it's, gee, I got to figure this out, or maybe I'll take a punt, or I'll wait till it works for me. So what this decentralization and this focus towards metaverses and technology and self-sovereignty, all these things rely on us educating each other and taking these messages and delivering and being able to answer the question to most people as to why. Why is this important to me? Why do I need to do that? I have a credit card, I have a bank account, I pay my taxes, I don't need any of this shit, right? And those people are, in my mind, doomed, right? And if you want to be part of the layer that's going to keep growing, you need to educate yourself. So I think I'll stop there. I think but so this is the opportunity, basically, level playing field, transparency, deterministic. That's what we're trying to get to. that's my dog Crypto, and that's all I got to say. Thank you. All right. Thank you, friends.
Thank you. Actually, before you leave, I'm just going to keep you up here for a minute. And we were talking about this a little bit before, put you on the spot. So some of you, when he's talking about metaverses and things like that, a lot of that is going to merge into what you may have heard, something called network states. Have any of you heard of what a network state is? Okay, some of you.
He's very well educated.
Probably more educated than most of us. So network states run along similar lines to what James was sharing, but that idea that you start with a network of who you're close to or anything, and then maybe that translates into something physical, maybe not. I was very early on that. I think Bourgerie has a book called Network State and a bunch of other things on there. I've started contributing in a few. I've seen that.
I have a comment about
Sure.
If you want to come on up.
But yeah, who was it? Was it Scott? That was talking about I just think this is a cool piece of, I think that like the original concept of the More 20 standard was to figure out how to fund network states. And so by staking your ETH into the network state, you are participating in the jurisdiction in which then you could, at any time, withdraw your participant in that jurisdiction yourself.
Well, I think that network states and the more concept, they're all about withdrawing this permission that we've given to the environment around us, right? It's all about taking back self-sovereignty. Right? The beautiful thing about the More 20 standard is that I don't give you my money, right? There's so many transactions that you do where you make an investment, where you start to diverge from the management, where you know that's not working, where you know they're just existing to pay their salaries, right? And to cover, and that they're going to run the thing into ground and you're never going to see your money again, right? Unfortunately, that's a very significant percentage of investments you make, especially in venture, right? And so the idea for More 20 is that you're never giving up your own interest in your own principal. So you're not risking your principal. And when you have a different interest and you want to move on to a higher yield, or you don't trust those guys anymore, you take back your money, right? And that's an incredibly powerful concept. That keeps management honest, right? If they act in a way that is not democratic, that's not approved, like I'm in 3 arguments now with founders and trying to get my money back. I don't even want the upside, I don't want the joy, just give me my money back, right? And it's no, you can't have it, that's not the contract you signed, and I'm realizing that I'm just writing off the investment if I don't get my money back, right?
So you've been tracking metaverses for a long time, I know, ever since the snow crash and before, right? What is your practical perception of like when these things are going to become real? There's all this hype about metaverse. I know you're not just talking games, you're talking about the real thing. Like in your, how many years has it been, and when do you think it's actually going to be?
So first of what? Okay, so the question is, when are metaverses going to become real? You know, right now they're games and they're virtual reality. They don't really work. They don't really have people in them. There isn't really business being done at them yet. So first of all, I don't agree with that. I'll address that in a second. But first I want to point out we have the first real estate broker in a metaverse in the world sitting in this room right now. David, who on Second Life was a real estate broker. So there was businesses happening. There were businesses happening on metaverses in 2002. 2006. So the way to answer that is that metaverses is a much bigger term than the games and those environments. And we already have metaverses that work. There are already societies and groups that you enter which are, you know, by their nature, self-contained. They're not always Bitcoin. Just the pure owning and moving Bitcoin is kind of a metaverse in a little way. It's self-sovereign, you know the rules, you know how it's going to work, you might not like it, even if you lose some money or there's slippage or whatever, you know how it worked. There wasn't a third party that did it to you, right? And so I think that it's not going to be so much grand, beautiful, visual, sweeping horizons with Kevin Costner riding in his cowboy hat. I think instead it's going to actually, in a lot of ways, resolve down and look like an app on your iPhone. I think that's inferior to Snow Crash, but we'll talk about it. So, but you know, but it's going to be basically on your iPhone. There's going to be little worlds that you enter into where you know the rules, and where because of digital cash and because of digital identity, which is much more important than money, by the way, because you can't have money unless you have identity. Identity is everything, right? So you'll have these little societies that you'll join where you'll be able to do banking, where you'll be able to do relationships, which might not be all-consuming and all-encompassing. And I think that's going to happen much faster. I think the idea of unified places where we all meet and look eye to eye and dance and sing and conduct war and business, I don't know, I don't know if how that happens and when that happens. I don't even think it's on the foreseeable future yet, actually. But I think that modularly, we're going to start to volunteer into these environments where we have control, and it'll be much more specific. So first, I think it'll be specific, and then I think it'll grow to a couple of things that go together, and then I think it'll start to layer into the visual aspects and the other aspects. What do you got? Yeah.
Well, just to add to that, who was there for the Second Life days in 2006, 2007? Did you ever play Second Life? It was sort of a game.
Only you and me.
5 million people were using Second Life back in 2006. It was getting this huge adoption. People had the limited dollar, right? One of the first virtual currencies. This is pre-Bitcoin, right? Does anybody remember why Second Life died? I do. January of 2007, the regulators walked into the office of Linden Labs, which was a centralized company in California, and said, "Dear Lord, do you know what people are doing inside your virtual world?" People had built stock markets, there was money transmission, there were remittances all over the world being sent. That's why people were using it. It was fucking cool. It could do all the things that people had built casinos, there was gaming, and the regulators were like, this is all regulated activity. You have to shut all of this down. And so it went from this cool system where you had property rights and a virtual currency. Sorry, no gaming. Sorry, no real estate. Sorry, no money transmission. We're not a regulated bank. Every single cool use case got killed. And so my perception is almost 20 years later, we've rebuilt the tech stack so that every piece is now decentralized. Now you have decentralized money, now you have decentralized smart contracts, now you got a decentralized AI. Like we rebuilt all of this minus Linden Labs, minus the company. And so I think the big thing that stopped Metaverse is the state. They wouldn't let you build an interesting metaverse with a virtual currency and all these other things as long as it was run by a company. So for me, it's like we're almost there. We've almost got all the pieces.
But that's why it's really important to stay focused. Remember, the system doesn't defeat the new ideas. The system absorbs them, right? So when you see, the country's saying, don't worry about crypto, we're going to have our own crypto. Right. So don't worry about tokens. Don't worry about about tokenizing assets. We have stock markets. We'll use a blockchain behind. We're blockchain enabled. We're the New York Stock Exchange, right? So you have to understand that the only thing that really matters to the core for this whole concept is the decentralization, the inability of the system to be able to decapacitate the effort. Right? And so if you see an effort where there's a person who is in charge of it, if has an office where there's computers, right, where it's incorporated, okay, you have to understand it's not decentralized, and while they're pitching you the buzzwords, they're not offering you the level of protection and the reality that you want to achieve.
On that note, something that I've been fascinated with and spent time on is, although a lot of this is virtual and we do have a lot of these components, there's always going to be a physical aspect, and it probably won't be founding an entire country or anything like that coming from a network of people, but you do need that critical infrastructure. You're going to need compute, and that's going to come from physical computer chips of some sort. You're going to need power to power those. You're going to need telecommunications. So a lot of the time that I've been spending, and even our last startup with decentralized hardware and other things like that, is really focusing on those key, specific, tactical pieces that do need a physical standpoint. And many times it does matter where that's going to be. It could be in communist China, it could be in the States, but even within the States, there's different jurisdictions that are a lot more amenable to that sort of thing. So some of the things that I've been working on and haven't talked to anyone about anything on this level is I've been talking to jurisdictions all over the world, especially those that are set up to be the most sovereign that we can be. I mean, we know the world, there's not really unclaimed territory really that you can just go take over, but we do the best with what we have, and I found some interesting nuances and interesting areas that I think provide hope for having as sovereign infrastructure as we can have. So a couple of those end up being in the States and Canada and other places. A lot of in our case, Native American or other indigenous lands, they tend to have more sovereignty than maybe a regular state or jurisdiction. And some of them, not many, but some of them are starting to really lead the way in regulations that they're doing and building out compute centers and green energy, and not just green, but different types of energy to be more robust and redundant. One, for example, the Catawba Digital Economic Zone in North and South Carolina I've been working with for a while. I really like what they've been doing. So one, they passed regulation. In many cases, I think they have the most forward digital asset regulation in the United States. They have full-blown digital asset banking charters, and now they have 2 bank charters already applied for, going through right now to set up banks that are treating and banking digital assets natively. I've had a DAO LLC there for almost 2 years now. So they've been leading the way in a lot of things, but they've also been investing into energy, data centers, and compute. And one of the things that I didn't know at the time, but in October when the executive order passed that was talked about earlier that could limit or restrict compute, that's when I learned that in this case, like reservations and Native American lands don't actually comply with executive orders, only something that comes from the legislative branch. So maybe in the case or in the limbo period where we do have some draconian regulation, technically they can be running more free and clear than we would be in a regular state or territory. And again, that's important if we want to have decentralized infrastructure and access to things. I mean, luckily in the world we are now, we can tie in anywhere in the world, but sometimes physical proximity matters. Countries can be at war, so we have to look at it very deep in many layers.
But I would, again, to bring it higher level, if you have to ask permission from anybody, it's not permissionless, and any person that gives you permission can take it away. So decentralization is a continuum. It's not a thing. It's not one point. It's a continuum that you exist upon. Every idea is completely centralized when it's born inside one person's head. And it travels a path, or not, towards decentralization as you bring other people in and as you allow other people to have the input and control and ownership of it until, ultimate decentralization, which may or may not actually even exist, right? But if you think about it, people forget, why does the internet exist? What was the birth of the internet? The internet came from the US government, from DARPA, because they were worried that all the phone lines ran through Chicago, across the country, and that the nuclear protection system of the United States was dependent on phone lines to inform the silos in Wisconsin and Montana from Washington. And they were worried that a nuclear weapon would be exploded above Chicago that would melt all our capability of communicating, and we wouldn't be able to respond to the Russians. That's why we have the internet today, right? And so when you think about it, the government has told you the way to protect yourself is to decentralize. That's what they did, right? And now they're busy telling you not to do it because, oh no, you don't need it, right? And again, this goes back to my fractals argument. If it works in one instance, it tends to work in all the others. You just have to remember that this concept of decentralized is not new, okay? It's not really radical. The only thing it does is it disintermediates and disenfranchises people that have power today that don't want to relinquish it, right? And so we're going through right now the beginning of a battle between the people that currently have power, control, and wealth due to the rules that we have allowed ourselves to be pushed into, and the future where we're going to have options. We're going to see how the system's going to react. It's not going to be friendly. And the closer we get to capitulation, the more violent the conflict is going to be, I believe. Because at the end, you have that one final throw to keep it. And so that's why I think it's really important for us to act as evangelists, to explain to people that you have a choice and that these opportunities out there, and Morpheus, and the reason we're here today, free AI, this is a perfect example of why we need to do this and how we need to implement ways to have a more bright future.
Well said.
There you go.
All right. I'll just a last note on that, and then we'll let James get back to his dog. But I'm going to keep
Crypto. His name is Crypto.
and his name is Crypto. The dog Crypto. So because of the continuum and all of that, but also the paradox of the need for some sort of physical aspect, in my mind, the best we can do is, as technology gets better and we can shrink what we're doing and also make it more mobile so it can shift with the wind or whatever it needs to, so we can keep decentralization from the top to the bottom. I don't know if that's a good or a bad part. But that being said, thank you. Thank you, James. Thanks, everyone. We're going to now jump into, since we already have David sitting up here. Oh, yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
So
Tell
I have a question
tell
for
to
James
sit.
and David. David, right? Yeah. David. So my question goes like this. In 1998, in the middle of the tech, internet boom, .com on fire, everybody, including me, were millions and millions of dollars on paper. Now we come to a huge crash, 2000, everything's quiet and all the .coms are gone and there's silence. It sounded similar to what James said about what's happening in the Metaverse, but obviously it seems to me that when GP5 comes out this summer, and that's going to transform the Metaverse. It's going to be like a friggin' lightning bolt underneath the entire subsection of everything that was built. Now, you said you handled real estate, and I remember watching all that, right in the middle of the rush. Why was buying some of this real estate and as I say to James, and to you, David, I said, I'm a cat, I know the normal world. The dog world is all crypto, Metaverse. It's a different world of building companies. So my question to you is, now is everything super cheap? Is all that real estate like it was in 2002, 2003 before the next boom started? Is it really cheap now? Is now the time to get in before GP5 takes?
But it depends. So cheap and expensive are relative terms. They're not absolute terms, right? And so they can only be assessed over time. So, is it cheap now compared to another point? It depends which point you choose, right? And it depends which technology. The thing that's consistent about all these things, and the reason that it all has patterns, is because the one common element in all these aspects and everything you've mentioned is people. So people behave the same in blue ocean opportunities regardless of what the underlying technology or asset is. It doesn't matter if it's art, technology, real estate, countries, it doesn't matter. Boom and bust and fear and greed drive human interaction and human investment decisions. So when you look at, is this a good time to invest in XYZ? The answer is, it depends which part of XYZ, which time, what's your horizon, right? You can't really make a decision of that. What you really need to do is watch people, and the hardest thing to do with foresight, and the easiest thing to do in hindsight, is to buy when people are selling and sell when people are buying. And it doesn't matter what the asset is, that rule works, right? And so when you're looking at these assets, knowing that ChatGPT-5 is coming, and knowing that it's going to make a change in the world, it's your responsibility to learn what impacts it's going to have, and what are the follow-on butterfly effects, and try and be on the train track before the general population realizes, and when they realize, to sell.
The Metaverse real estate?
So think about real estate in a very broad sense, right? If you had gotten into Google or Amazon in 1999, right, at the height of the hype, right, you were disappointed in 2000 when the hype died down and the prices went down. But did people stop adopting the internet? No. right? If you look at the usage of the internet, the number of users never stopped growing. Like you can't even see the dot-com boom and bust on the adoption chart, right? Every year, twice as many people had an internet connection, from 100 million to 200 million to 400 million to 800 million, all the way up to the billions of people today. So what I tend to do is just focus on usage. Everything else is noise, right? Because if you look at the usage, that will tell you the value over time, right? So there's these cycles, there's fear and greed, there's these human psychological things that's going to go through booms and busts. I don't care, because I'm fortunate enough to have a long enough timeline where I can be like, where's going to be in 5 years? Right. And as long as the adoption keeps increasing, right, with AI systems or crypto, there are now 400 million people with the Web3 wallet. Like 100, 150 million of those are on MetaVerse, there's Exodus, there's all these wallets. That's the real adoption. That's the real network effect. So you saw the boom and the bust in 20 and 21. Oh, crypto's over. Nope. It went from 100 million to 200 million to 400 million people. And my belief is that AI is going to get us to 1 billion people. Because it's going to make it so damn easy to use crypto. So just tell the machine what they want to do.
Right, so David and I are brothers from another mother, so we tend to agree on most things like this. So when you're looking at technology investments, when you're looking at crypto, and you're looking at these things, the thing I would, the filter that I use is don't get distracted by the technology, okay? People don't invest or use technology because they understand it. They use it because they like it, right? So the thing that matters isn't the tech. The thing that matters is, does the tech work? If it works, you still don't have a business, you still don't have an investment, you still don't have value. The thing that matters is what David's talking about, which is usage, right? The tech that gets used and gets habituated and has value and that people talk about and give energy to, those are the ones that are valuable. If you go to the top 200 tokens on CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap, all right, I promise you that if you organize them by market cap, but then you put another column that's people using it and how often do they use it, and make that a number 2, it'll be an identical list, right? So you don't need to understand the technology. You just need to know, are people using this stuff, and are more people going to use it because what it does is interesting and will attract other people who are lazy and want to do whatever else is doing to be secure or to have fun or to make money.
That's fair. Any other questions while we have these two wealths of knowledge on stage? Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's fantastic. Thank you.